Hey guys, so I guess I'm not here and we're doing this like this. So let's talk about the money market graph. Right before you guys left yesterday, we drew this graph, but we didn't really talk about it. So that's what this video and lesson is over today. So the money market graph shows you guys the graph of supply and demand of money in circulation. That's what this money graph is all about. Remember, this is different than loanable funds because loanable funds shows you supply and demand of money in the bank available for loans. Money market is different. It shows you the supply and demand of money not in the bank, the money in circulation. So that's the money market graph, supply and demand. And notice how money supply is completely vertical. That means it's like a set amount. Here, let me change my pen because it's a little too big. Okay, so money supply, or MS for short, or SM, is going to be a set amount. It is vertical because it's a fixed amount of money that's in circulation. There's not like an infinite amount of money. It's this many dollars and this many cents. So this is a set amount. Technically, it's M1. Remember, money supply is the money in circulation, the money that's in your checking account, that's in your pocket, cash, coins, checks, traveler's checks. And so money supply is technically M1. It's the most liquid amount of money. So there it is. It's controlled by the Federal Reserve. Money demand is downward sloping, and we're going to talk about why that is. And notice how it says nominal interest rates. Nominal interest rates. Not real this time. Because remember, this is money in circulation. And the economy, the money that's in circulation has inflation in it. So with loanable funds, it's real interest rates because, banks adjust their interest rates based on what they think inflation's going to be. But if it's money, it's in circulation, like there's no one to adjust the money in circulation who would do that. And so this is going to be, hold on a second. Sorry, someone was at the door. I had to shoo them away. So this is nominal interest rates. Remember, it is not adjusted. Adjusted for inflation. That's what nominal means. Not adjusted for inflation. It has inflation in it because it's money that's in circulation. Money in circulation has inflation in it because how would that be even adjusted? I don't even know. So money supply, we know why it's vertical because that's like a set amount of M1 money supply. But why is money demand? Why is it downward sloping? And this is always like an AP test question, a multiple choice question, things like that. Let me move this so it's not on my face. Just put it there. Money demand is downward sloping for a couple of reasons. And let's talk about one of them. Well, basically, what does a downward sloping line mean? It is saying that there is a negative relationship between the y-axis and the x-axis. So, like, let's say the interest rates go from here to here. Interest rates fall, let's say. The nominal interest rate falls. And because of the nominal interest rate falling, the money demand is downward sloping, so that's saying that there's a negative relationship. So if interest rates fall, there's going to be a higher quantity of money in circulation. And why is that? Okay, so why is money demand downward sloping? Meaning, like, why is the quantity of money increasing when interest rates are low? When nominal interest rates are low? Well, two reasons. If interest rates are low, and let's say there's interest rates low on your savings account, and you have your check, you have your paycheck in your pocket or something, and you've cashed it and you've got money, you could keep it in a savings account or you could just keep it in your wallet. Well, if interest rates are low, there's really no reason to drive to the bank and put it in your savings account. So you're just going to keep it in your wallet because interest rates are so low. It's not even worth having a savings account. It's not even worth driving to the bank, depositing it into the savings account for what, pennies? So you're just going to keep it in your wallet, which means if it's in your wallet, it's not in the bank. There's more money in circulation, and that's the idea of asset demand, money demand as an asset. Money demand money demand as an asset. I'm not going to have too much demand for money to be used as like a savings. I'm not going to keep my money as an asset like a savings account because there's no money being earned on my interest. Interest is too low for it to be worth it. So my demand for money to be used as an asset goes down. I don't need it as an asset because interest rates are so low. But there's this other thing. The other flip side of that is transaction demand for money. Transaction demand for money. Well, these are kind of work hand in hand. If interest rates are low, I don't want money in the bank as an asset because interest rates are low is not worth it. But I do want interest rates in my pocket. Sorry, I do want interest rates high. I do want money in my pocket instead to buy things. And so that's a transaction, to buy things. So if interest rates are low, I don't want it as an asset. I do want it for a transaction. And so my transaction demand for money will go up because there's no point, once again, to have it as an asset in the bank and savings. I'd rather just keep it in my pocket. So I'm going to demand money for transactions and not demand it for savings. And so that's why there's more money in circulation, because my transaction demand is high if interest rates are low. Okay. And remember, the flip side is true. If my interest rates go up and now my savings account's earning more money, I'm probably more likely to drive to the bank and make that extra trip and deposit that money. So I would have more demand for money as an asset in a savings account. I don't need it as so much to buy things anymore. If interest rates are earning so much money, I'm just going to keep it in the bank. And I have less money in my pocket, less money for transactions, more money to be used as an asset. So it is vice versa. Interest rates fall, higher quantity of money in circulation because there's no point of having it in the bank. Interest rates goes up though, now I can totally see it's worth driving to a bank and putting my money in a savings account if interest rates are higher. Okay. So let's talk about the things that shift this money supply and money demand graph. So just to let you know, money supply, that's still a pen. Okay, let's try it again. Money supply is shifted by the buying and selling of bonds, which is our primary monetary policy tool. It's the one they're going to do like 90% of the time. They rarely change the other two, the discount rate and the required reserve ratio. They're rarely going to change those. They're really going to be buying and selling bonds because, well, it has a bigger impact. And so money supply is affected. Oop, I can't spell when I'm right. This is affected. It's affected by open market operations. Remember, that's a fancy way of saying buying and selling federal bonds. Open market operations. So, if there is more, let's say there's a recession and we really want interest rates to go down, I could change the discount rate and things like that, but they're really going to buy and sell bonds to do monetary policy. So in the case of a recession, they would buy bonds. So if the Fed, so like in a recession, I keep changing from pen to things because I don't really know what I'm doing here. In a recession, the Fed buys bonds. The Fed buys securities, buys bonds. And if it buys bonds, it gives banks, the Fed buys bonds from the bank, giving banks money, and then they're going to loan out that money to other people. And so they're going to increase money supply, and money supply is going to shift to the right, like this. Okay, make sure that's a straight line. Money supply 2. Well, what is the effect of that? Well, now we have a new equilibrium, and that drives down interest rates from like 1 to 2. From 1 here to 2 here. So interest rates are going to go down because they increase money supply. And I said this, but I never really talked about it. This interest rate, whatever the interest rate is here, the equilibrium, is the Fed funds interest rates. Fed funds interest rate. This interest rate is what banks charge each other for loans. So you can do one thing. If you're a bank, you can do a couple things. If you run out of money and you need to cover your required reserves, things like that, and you need to borrow money, you can borrow money from another bank down the street, or you can borrow money from the Federal Reserve. But here's the thing. You can borrow money from the Federal Reserve at a cheaper interest rate. But that's like borrowing money from like your boss. You don't want to do that. They're going to be like, why do you need the money? And what are you doing that's so sketchy at your bank that you need to borrow money from me? So you're typically not going to be borrowing money from the Fed. Like, banks rarely go to the Fed at all. They don't want to, because it's going to come with like lots of rules, and they might get audited by the Fed. And basically you want to really avoid talking to them all. You want to be like under the radar, not messing with the Federal Reserve. Because then they're going to like get all up in your business. So the Fed funds rate is what banks charge each other. It is the interest rate that banks charge each other. That's the one that's going to be other. Banks charge each other. That's going to be the one that's used most often. So they're not going to change the discount rate very much, because very few banks borrow from the Fed at all. They really going to borrow from other banks, other branches, bigger branches, the bank across the street, whatever. And that way they'll pay this interest rate. So that's why this interest rate is a little bit more important than the discount rate. It is not a tool of monetary policy, but it is totally affected by the tools. So open market operations affects the Fed funds rate. So the Federal Reserve doesn't have direct control over the Fed funds rate, but they have direct control over buying and selling of bonds, which changes the Fed funds rate. And once again, just the opposite. If they are in a period of expansion, hold on, I'm going to pause. Okay, so now let's say the problem is an inflationary gap, and we want to slow down people's spending. So the Fed, if there's an inflation, the Fed will now use its open market operation to sell bonds to banks. Banks are going to have to pay with this from money out of their excess reserves, which means there's going to be less money in circulation because less loans will be given. Okay, so money supply too. Well, now that's what drives up interest rates. So now it's even harder to take out loans from other banks because the Fed funds rate, remember that's the Fed funds rate, which is the interest rate that banks charge each other. And I get that's confusing. If you borrow money from the Fed, you pay a discount rate. And if you borrow money from other banks, you pay the federal funds rate. So the one that's not with the Fed is called the Fed. Yeah, I get that. It's confusing. I can totally see why people hate economics. But then again, I also see how you could love it, because how do you not? So we have higher interest rates now, and that will decrease investment spending, which will decrease aggregate demand and hopefully close that inflationary gap, which was the problem to begin with. So right now, hold on. Right now, get this out. This is the packet that we had our bank balance sheet in. It was like the bank balance sheet was somewhere here in the middle. I want you to turn to it. The front page, just a little bit extra information about monetary policy. So kind of, you can look at that at your own time. I want you guys in class to be working on the next couple of pages where it says Lesson 4, Activity 38 on the back of that. Lesson 6, Activity 42. And basically you are working all the way up until the bank balance sheet. So it's like 4 pages. I don't expect you to finish this all in one class period. I want to see how much work you can get done. But I'm going to leave like a little, I'm going to make another video going over directions and things like that of what you should be doing. And maybe we'll do the first 1 or 2 together if you watch the video, and do the rest on your own, hopefully. Hopefully I'll be back on Friday. This has been like the longest week ever. Go get a flu shot and take your vitamins, drink some water, and cover your mouth when you sneeze. And get some sleep, but not in class. Save that for later. Not now. Later. I'll see you guys later. Bye.